The day my parents abandoned me, I thought my life was over. I was 16 when my mother packed my clothes into 2 old suitcases and placed them beside the front door. I stood there, staring at her. "Mom, what's happening?" She wouldn't look at me. My father was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone as if nothing unusual was happening. Finally, he looked up. "Your grandfather will take care of you now." I felt my heart sink. "What? Why?" My mother sighed. "We have our own life now." Those 6 words destroyed something inside me. I wasn't being sent away because they couldn't afford to raise me. They weren't protecting me from anything. They simply didn't want the responsibility anymore. My father picked up my suitcase and carried it outside. I followed him. "Dad, please. Just tell me what I did." He stopped at the car. "You didn't do anything." "Then why are you leaving me?" He didn't answer. A few minutes later, their car disappeared down the road. I stood there with tears running down my face, wondering how the 2 people who gave me life could walk away so easily. Then Grandpa opened his front door. He didn't ask questions. He simply pulled me into his arms. "You're home now," he whispered. That night, I cried until I fell asleep. But Grandpa never made me feel unwanted. He taught me how to cook, helped me with school, and worked harder whenever money became tight. Whenever I asked about my parents, he always said the same thing. "Don't waste your heart trying to understand people who chose to leave." Years passed. I graduated. I found a job. I built a life. My parents barely contacted me. Then, shortly before Grandpa died, he called me into his study. He looked weak, but his eyes were strangely serious. "Promise me something." "Anything, Grandpa." He reached for my hand. "Don't let them take what I built for you." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He smiled. "You'll understand soon." 3 days later, Grandpa passed away. And at his funeral, the parents who had abandoned me suddenly returned. But they weren't there because they missed me. They were there because Grandpa had left something behind. Something they desperately wanted. And they had no idea that Grandpa had already prepared for them. At the funeral, my mother hugged me. It felt strange. She hadn't hugged me in years. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "We've missed you so much." I stepped back. Missed me? Where had she been when I graduated? Where had she been when I spent Christmas alone? Where had she been when I needed parents? I didn't say anything. Then my father approached me. "We need to discuss the estate." That was when I understood. They weren't back for me. They were back for Grandpa's money. That evening, they came to Grandpa's house. My mother immediately started looking around. "That cabinet must be worth a fortune." My father opened drawers. "Your grandfather had investments too, didn't he?" I stared at them. "Grandpa just died." My father frowned. "And that's exactly why we need to be practical." I couldn't believe it. These were the same people who had abandoned me. Now they were standing in the house Grandpa had left me, acting like they owned it. The next morning, an attorney arrived. My parents sat beside me. My father looked confident. My mother looked almost excited. Then the attorney opened Grandpa's final will. The first announcement stunned everyone. Grandpa had left the house to me. My father immediately stood. "That can't be right." The attorney continued. His savings, investments, and ownership of his business were also being transferred to me. My mother stared at me. "She can't manage all that. She's too young." I almost laughed. I had been managing my entire life without them. Then the attorney handed me a letter. "Your grandfather specifically asked that you read this privately." My hands began shaking. I opened it. The first sentence made my heart stop. "If you're reading this, they have finally come back." I looked at my parents. My father suddenly became uncomfortable. I continued reading. Grandpa knew exactly why my parents had abandoned me. He knew they had chosen an easier life without me. But he also knew they would return when they discovered what he had built. Then came the part that changed everything. Grandpa wrote, "I don't want you to punish them. I want you to become everything they believed you could never become." Tears filled my eyes. But the biggest surprise was still coming. Grandpa had placed one condition on the inheritance. I had to keep his business running for 1 full year. My father smiled. "You'll fail." I looked at him. He leaned forward. "You don't understand business. Eventually, you'll need someone experienced." And suddenly, I understood. He wasn't offering help. He was waiting for me to fail. But Grandpa had left me more than money. He had left me a challenge. And I wasn't going to lose. Grandpa's business wasn't huge. It was a local repair and supply company that he had built over decades. I knew almost nothing about running it. But I decided to learn. Every morning, I arrived early. I spoke with employees. I studied the accounts. I learned about customers and suppliers. Slowly, something strange happened. I started enjoying it. For the first time, I understood what Grandpa had been preparing me for. Then one afternoon, I discovered several unusual payments. Large amounts of money had been transferred to a company I didn't recognize. I called the accountant. "What's this?" He hesitated. "Your father recommended that company." My stomach tightened. "My father?" The accountant nodded. I began investigating. The company receiving the money was connected to someone my father knew. And the payments didn't appear to be legitimate business expenses. They were draining money from Grandpa's company. Then I discovered something even worse. My father had been telling people that I didn't know what I was doing. He had apparently told several employees that I would eventually give up and hand the business to him. I sat alone in Grandpa's office that night. I remembered his final words. "Don't let them take what I built for you." Suddenly, everything made sense. Grandpa had known. Maybe he had suspected my father would try to take control. That's why the will had been written so carefully. I called the attorney. I found suspicious payments. There was silence. Then he said, "Your grandfather expected that." I froze. "What?" He asked me to arrange an independent review if anything unusual happened after his death. My heart started pounding. Grandpa had planned for this. I didn't confront my parents immediately. Instead, I gathered everything. Bank records. Contracts. Messages. Payment documents. Every piece of evidence. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. Then I called my parents. "Come to the office tomorrow." My father sounded amused. Finally ready to accept my help. I didn't answer. The next morning, they arrived together. My father walked in like he owned the place. My mother smiled. "You finally realized you need us." I placed a folder on the table. My father looked at it. "What's that?" I pushed it toward him. "Everything." He opened the folder. His smile disappeared. Inside were the records showing where the money had gone. His face changed. For the first time, my father looked afraid. But I wasn't finished. I had one final document. And once I placed it on that table, there would be no way for him to pretend anymore. My father stared at the documents. "You're misunderstanding this." I didn't respond. He continued. "These were legitimate business expenses." I placed another page in front of him. "Then explain this." Silence. My mother looked at him. "What is she talking about?" He became angry. "Stay out of this." That was when I finally spoke. "No." Everyone looked at me. "You don't get to do that anymore." My voice shook, but I didn't back down. You abandoned me when I was 16. My father looked away. You didn't raise me. You didn't help me. You didn't even ask whether I was okay. My mother began crying. We made mistakes. I looked at her. Years of mistakes. Neither of them answered. Then I placed the final document on the table. The independent audit. The suspicious payments had been confirmed. The money had been recovered. The contracts were cancelled. And my father's involvement had been documented. He stared at the report. You're going to destroy your own father? I shook my head. No. I looked directly into his eyes. You did that yourself. I didn't scream. I didn't insult him. I didn't try to ruin his life. I simply refused to protect him from the consequences of his choices. The business stayed mine. The house stayed mine. And I honored Grandpa's final wish. I kept the business running for the full year. But something unexpected happened. It grew. I improved the systems. I brought in new customers. The employees began trusting me. And when that first year ended, the company was worth more than it had ever been under Grandpa. I sat alone in his study that evening. His old chair was still there. His books were still on the shelf. And his final letter was still in my hands. I turned it over. For the first time, I noticed another sentence written on the back. Family isn't always the person who gives you life. Sometimes it's the person who gives you a reason to keep going. I started crying. For years, I had wondered what was wrong with me. Why had my parents left? Why hadn't I been enough? But Grandpa taught me the truth. Someone else's decision to abandon you doesn't define your worth. My parents eventually tried to come back. But this time, I didn't need their approval. I simply told them. You don't get to abandon someone and return only when there's something to gain. Then I walked away. That was my revenge. Not destroying them. Not making them suffer. My revenge was becoming the person they believed I could never become. Grandpa didn't leave me just a house or a business. He left me confidence. He left me strength. And most importantly, he taught me that sometimes losing the people who don't value you is the beginning of finding yourself. So if someone has ever walked away from you, remember this. Their decision to leave does not decide your value. Sometimes the people who abandon you think they're taking your future away. But they may simply be making room for you to build a better one. I lost my parents when I was 16. But I found a grandfather who never gave up on me. And when he left this world, he gave me one final gift. The courage to stop begging people who abandoned me to prove that I was worth loving. And that changed everything.